Impact Teams Radio. Welcome to Impact Teams Radio, the show where we explore what it takes to be a leader of the leaders in corporate America. Get ready to be inspired and discover proven tips for going from average to exceptional. Now, here's your host and guide, Tony Sherman.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Impact Teams Radio. Today, my guest is Jim Bohn of Pro Axios. But before we get to meet Jim, let me just tell you a little bit about why I invited Jim on the show. Jim is a principal at Pro Axios, and as you guys know, I love the leadership articles in LinkedIn, and Jim writes some real doozies on there. He's got a very strong following. Jim is somebody who can crack the social media code. Now, this isn't about social media, but this is about influence. What I found with Jim is not only does he have good articles, there are loads of guys out there who have articles just as good as Jim's, but Jim's has great conversations below them. And people make thoughtful comments. I love to, just a couple of these. I won't sidetrack us now. We'll get into it later on. But he's got a great one on organizational attention deficit, which if you're on LinkedIn, and you should be, you should go and find out. So enough burbling from me. Hello, Jim. Thank you for coming on the show.
Hi, Tony. How are you today?
I am well, thank you. I've been looking forward to this episode all day. I would say for the last 2 or 3 days. It's been a bit of a tough week, so this is a great spirit lifter, I hope, today. So thanks again for coming on. Jim, before we dive into the standard interview that we do, why don't I step away from the mic for a minute or two and allow you to introduce yourself to our listeners?
Oh, great. Thanks very much. I appreciate that. Well, I can tell you that I've been in the corporate world for over 40 years in all kinds of capacities, ranging from the shop floor to director of best business practice to global director of change management, and as a consultant to different corporations. I like to call myself a blue-collar scholar. My father was a shop worker with an incredible work ethic. And what I did was took his work ethic and applied a PhD to it so that I could take the skills that he had and some of the learning out in the research community and put those two things together. So his work ethic is what influences me the most. I love working with people. I love working with teams. I've had several successful teams, award-winning teams, and we were able to take groups of people who were very depressed and very discouraged, and within 18 to 24 months, turn them into winning the top awards in some companies that I worked in. So that's a bit of my background. I don't want to belabor it too much, but does that help?
Oh, that's awesome, yes. I love the phrase blue-collar scholar. You realize you just gave me the title for this episode before we've even got going. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So you mentioned some award-winning teams, so why don't we start there? What we like to do on the show is always start with a high note and ask people for 1 or 2 wins from their career, how they did a win, and what it meant for them, what they learned from that. So why don't I step back and tell us 1 or 2 of the wins that you've had in your career?
I would say one of the biggest was a large merger and acquisition. And again, I can't go into the company because that's proprietary, but it was multi-millions of dollars, a merger and acquisition. And I worked with a team of 50 people. We learned what the field's concerns were as we were bringing these 2 organizations together. And as you know, Tony, most mergers and acquisitions are very rough going, but we were able to bring these 2 organizations together with some good change management practice and guidance, and we were actually more profitable that year bringing the 2 teams together. But we had to get out into the field and to talk to people, and again, using the blue-collar ethic, especially people in the service community, understanding what their needs and concerns were and addressing them. So that was a big one. The second one that I would offer was bringing together a customer service team that at one point in time was just really depressed and discouraged. They were administrative people that felt that they had no respect in an organization, and through the use of a lot of effort and a lot of new technology, training people, we were able to elevate them to a place where they won the highest award in the company that I worked at. And it was a lot of different things. It was good training, it was good hiring practices, it was good technology, pretty much a full court press, but always keeping them in mind, because my intent was to take people who felt that they were sort of on the outskirts of an organization and bring them to the forefront, get them the recognition that they needed. And when that happens to people, you can see the power of motivation within them, and they really start to shine. So those are two of the stories that I would offer to you at this point.
So I'm just taking a quick note, as I always do.
Well, go ahead.
On the mergers and acquisition, it was interesting. You said that you use good change management. First of all, my basic reading on this, and it's probably dated, but in mergers and acquisitions, about 70% of them that succeed fail financially. So to become more profitable in the same year sounds an incredibly positive win just from a global perspective on that. And it must have been a huge company if you had 50 people working on the merger and acquisitions team.
It was. And again, I won't mention the team. You can see that out on my LinkedIn post if you want to.
Fair enough. So on the change management process, what do you think were the key elements of the change management that you used to bring two disparate teams together or two disparate cultures and make it successful, which in corporate terms you did pretty much instantaneously?
Well, I would say that there are many things, but two really big ones stand out. A corporate team is always viewed a little bit cautiously by the field. And so one of the things we did is we found the best people in the field to talk to the field, people that had been successful through the years, and we got some of them together. We talked to them ahead of time, and we said, how would you like to tell your colleagues this merger and acquisition should go? And we got them on conference calls, and they started to talk about the behaviors that they would expect. But it was the field talking to the field, and I can't stress that enough. You can offer corporate initiatives to people, but they will look to the people that they're working with every day, and especially their peers who are having to go through the same struggles. And if those people are saying, yes, this can be done, yes, we can achieve this, and here's some of the things we can do, they will listen to them. So that's one big one. The other one is this simple blocking and tackling of a good team working together, ensuring that you have a good rhythm and routine of follow-up every week. But I would say the one that I was most responsible for in the midst of that was, getting out into the field, riding around in trucks with technicians, trying to find out what they were concerned about. I think I interviewed upwards of 50 people to find out what their concerns were. And once you have those concerns, you can use their language. You can take that language back to executives and say, these are the concerns of people. Let's go address those specific concerns, as opposed to assuming that we knew what people were concerned about. So again, it goes back to understanding, being on the shop floor with my dad, that there were people out there that had a sense of how things should be, and very often there was a disconnect with those team members in management. But I always believe that getting out in the field, getting your hands dirty a little bit, that's where you learn things, and then people come around to say, these people do respect us, they care about what we're doing, and they care about us enough that we're going to care back, and we'll try to make this thing work. That was a big part of it.
And that makes sense. I mean, you hear this quite often encapsulated in the phrase management by walking around, which is, in a virtual environment, is getting harder and harder to do.
It is harder and harder to do, but it still can be done. I still believe that through things like signing on to videos and talking with people there, and just even the basics. I think sometimes people forget that they can pick up the phone and just talk with all of the instant messaging and so forth, but it can be done. We can still have communication with people. We can still send them a sense of care and concern about what they're doing, and also checking in to see if things are wrong. And of course, that all assumes that we've built trust with those people prior to the time that we ask for information.
Actually, you're right. When you were talking, reminded me of an incident that happened to me a few months ago. A guy in the company I work for called Joel reached out and said to me on IM, hey, do you have a few minutes? And I went, yeah, sure. And we jumped on a call together. And he said, so how's it going? I said, well, which part of the project are you interested in? He said, no, I'm just phoning up to find out how you're doing.
Wonderful. And that meant something to you.
Oh, yeah, well, I'm telling you about it now, months later. You know, I was just like, it took me 30 seconds to adjust to the fact this is a friendly, collegiate call.
And the man he was more interested in you at that moment than simply the task output. And I think especially as fast as organizations are moving today, sometimes we forget that it doesn't take long to just check in with people before we go straight to the task. I think that's so important.
Right, and you can make a habit of that, which is what you're saying. Make it part of your routine as you engage with people. But what you're talking about with the mergers and acquisitions is you were really looking at, you took a lot of your time up front and invested in it, but in management by walking around. That takes a fair amount of discipline and commitment to a principle, doesn't it?
It does, and but at the same time, by going and doing that and having people actually see you make a presence out there, they start to believe, first of all, that you're really serious about the change. And secondly, when you're on a conference call and you use language from the field and you say, I learned this from a guy in Los Angeles, I learned this from a gal in North Carolina, all of a sudden it starts to sound like we're working together as opposed to just go do this.
Yes, and that makes a lot of sense. So, so you said about strong team follow-up and so forth, using their language, a corporate culture, using the field to talk to the field. When you look at the customer service team that you turned around, it's that your phrase was use the full court press. In other words, I read that as you were optimizing on every dimension that made sense. The technology, the teams, the training, the hiring, making sure you were building a continually stronger team. Was there one or two lessons that you took away from that you inculcated in your experience going forward?
I would say one of the biggest ones and probably one of the hardest ones is if someone is not working with you to achieve that goal, you kindly but firmly say that they'll have to find another role, because they can, especially when you're under a big full court press. And I know that's an American term for basketball, but when you're trying to achieve something, the one thing you need to do is have everyone working with you. So that would be one thing. The other thing, again, though, is going to the team members and sitting with them and listening to them and hearing the concerns and hearing the anecdotes and sometimes even hearing them literally cry about their inability to get something done, and then to commit to them that you're going to achieve that with them. When they see that people are actually trying to work toward solving a chronic problem, and I say this to all executives, if you can solve a chronic problem that no one believes can be solved, your credibility goes up 1,000%, because they've wanted this problem solved for maybe 3, 4, 5 years, and now someone came in, took the pains to address the issue, achieved what they said they were going to achieve, and now people will say, well, this person can get this work done. I'll follow this person, and then they start to step up even more. It has a really nice, almost a momentum to it when they get one achievement and they want to go on to another. So I would say that as well is important to take on a chronic problem, work as hard as you can to get that problem solved, and then over the top of all of it is really to continue to recognize people for even small wins. I know John Cotter talks about that, but I believe that for many, many years. So those things. Does that help?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. In fact, I work now for a boss called Vanda, and she is phenomenal at spotting small wins and making sure it goes as far up the chain as possible. I've seen like one of the newest guys in the team come onto the team, and newest guys in the company, do a really good job. I mean, this wasn't just like a pat on the head because he was new. He did an excellent job, and she took it all the way up the chain to the CEO saying, this is the quality of work that we should be putting in front of our customers. She's very, very good at that, and it makes a huge difference, not only to me, but to everybody that works for her. She has an incredible set of loyalty of the people around her.
Well, it's an interesting thing, Tony. I'll just step over into the realm of motivation psychology for a minute. There's an old researcher by the name of White in the year 1959 discovered something that he called affectance motivation. And I know that sounds very scholarly, but all it means is I want to make a difference. And in your lifetime, you've heard that phrase hundreds of times. What do you want to do? I want to make a difference. Every human being wants to know that they've made a difference. And when someone identifies that someone actually has made a difference, especially in the workplace where you spend hundreds of hours and sometimes wonder, did it even matter that I was here? If someone validates that, that's so extremely powerful. And so I've always believed in the power of recognition. I've seen even in my own life, I thought I was immune to it because I've studied this stuff for so long, but to have a vice president walk down the hall, thoroughly and genuinely shake my hand with a smile and say, thank you for your work, that's powerful stuff. So again, that's another element of what I think it takes to make a winning team.
Oh, absolutely. I'm smiling here when you were saying about it working on you. But the other thing is, like, I try to use these good techniques, but I notice them on myself as well. And when I first learned about techniques and was using them, and then saw them used on me, and then was surprised at how positive I felt, having even spotted what was going on, I realized I'm a human being, and providing it's done with genuineness, it means just as much to me as it does to anyone else.
It really does. It really does. So I think that's probably something that a lot of organizations talk about. A lot of them will talk about recognition, but I think it could be used to much greater advantage, not only for the corporation, but also for the people that are working there.
And actually, you use recognition, and a lot of companies do recognition, and I don't mind it, but it doesn't make an impact on me. At the end of the year, when they call people up and you get 2 or 3 people who've really contributed, I feel pleased for those people, but it doesn't make it. I could tell you about the awards recognition we had at the beginning of the year with our company. It didn't mean anything to me. It was nice that we do it. But Vanda, what she did with that one guy and taking out the train in the moment of the workflow, made a huge difference to me. And I remember that. So I think a lot of times we formalize recognition, where I think the power of recognition is in the informality, in the moment. Like you said, walking up to someone and saying, what you did today made a difference today.
Right, and that's exactly true, because a lot of the formal recognition, I think people almost expect the awards and the trophies and plaques and so forth, but it's in the moment of the achievement itself, when that has been validated and almost codified in the DNA of a company. Now you're saying this was real stuff, and you didn't have to wait 6 months to hear that. It was in the moment, and it is powerful. So maybe that's another phrase for you, in the moment recognition. I like that a lot.
Yeah, I'm actually taking a note right now. So I take really bad notes, and then when I listen to this again, reading my bad notes, I'm like, oh, that's what I meant by that, and I slow down and take better notes.
Sure.
So those are some wins that you've done. As you look over the arc of your career, have you had anywhere where you've tried your best, or something's happened, an outside force, and it really wasn't a win, but you still took away a lot of lessons from it?
You know, the one that strikes me the most in that is something that I would call unintended favoritism. And I didn't even know I was doing this as a manager until I got some 360-degree feedback. When I had this customer service team, sometimes I would walk into the organization and, smile at a couple of people and say hi to them. And what I came to find out was that I was sort of doing that with a select group of people that were a little bit more responsive to me as opposed to others. And that was a hard moment for me when somebody said, he does encouragement to those people he likes. That was a moment early in my career where I said, boy, I really needed to do something different here. And that changed me along the way. It was like, I need to balance this out. I need to think of the entire team, not just those people that are friendly and responding to me. So that was a failure on my part, and I think that if I had to do it again, I would change that, but that's part of the learning process. The other thing that I would offer is, I think I was in over my head at least one time, probably more than one time, but with a technology and with a new process that I did not understand. And I had a couple of team members, we didn't really understand what we were doing. And because of that, we fabricated some data that we thought was good. It wasn't a malicious thing, but we fabricated some data that we thought was good. And that really put one of the executives that I worked with in a really bad light. And I was really grateful for the way he managed the situation. But I will tell you that the lack of detail that I did in that particular moment, it changed my life. It was like, from this point forward, no matter how hard I have to work, I will find a way to get to the bottom of these things and understand them properly. So it was a matter of cutting corners, and even as I'm thinking about it right now, that was a tough moment for me when he was up in front of a group of people and the data was wrong, and he was embarrassed because of the work that I had done. So gratefully, he and I are still friends, but at that point in time, it was very tense. So those would be two that I would offer.
actually, you can hear the tension in your voice as you retell that second story. So
really?
Obviously made a huge, oh yeah, absolutely. But going back to the first, and I'm not belittling the second one, but with the first one, what I heard with the unintended favoritism was the phrase you used.
Yes.
But that actually, it pulled out something to me about leadership. And this can be leadership from anybody listening at the lowest level of corporate America to the highest level, because what you did was actually built into your DNA. That unintended favoritism is how you're wired as a human being. And what you're saying with a 360-degree feedback was it taught you that as a leader, you actually had to be mindful consistently not to fall to the way you are wired naturally. Because we go to people that like us, that give us the right social signals, the positive feedback. That's how we're wired. What you taught me there was, as a leader, you've almost got to look at your natural wiring and make sure it's not undermining you.
Well, that's really, I never even thought of that. That's really true. I was gravitating to those folks and not thinking about it, but here I am many years later understanding, that's what I was gravitating to, what was probably the path of least resistance. Interesting. Yeah,
and it's just pure human nature, isn't it? It's not just a path of ease, it's a path of survival instinct, if you will, if you go back far enough.
Wow, that's interesting.
So, I'll tell you what, I cannot believe the time, but we are out of time already. I haven't even got, well, actually, I'm going to just overrun for a few minutes because this is too good of an episode not to ask this question. As you've obviously grown in a fairly sophisticated arc, and you're very sophisticated, not just leader in your own right, but a mentor to leaders. How did you develop as a leader? What was did you have mentors along the way? Did you do it by reading? Was it situational? And I don't know. How did you grow as a leader?
Well, there are a couple of things. I would say first and foremost, again, going back to this blue collar ethic that I was raised with, my father would tell me, if you don't know something, ask, and don't try to portray yourself as someone who knows something that you don't. It's just that simple. And so in those times when I've stumbled and failed. But what I would often do is look in the companies that I worked for, people that were really, really good at their work, and befriend them, especially as a young man, and say, how do you do what you do? And then shut my mouth. And very often, they had big egos, and they would, tell me, how stupid I was and so forth. But I learned a lot from those people, and I watched what they did, and I watched how successful they were. The other thing I'm pretty good at, I don't know where it comes from, I guess it's just my style, but I'm a good social learner. And I've watched a lot of great leaders through the years, whether it's on television, whether it's in movies, whether it was in business, and those behaviors that they modeled, I wanted to make those part of my life. And I thought, how can I do that? How can I become that person? And then along the way, of course, going to do the doctorate, that was really hard work. But that, as far as my development was concerned, got me into levels of human motivation, organizational psychology, personality psychology, and those kinds of things. And that sets a depth of understanding of human nature that I suppose you could find by experience, but by immersing oneself in those readings and writings and listening to professors and thinking while I was on the job at the same time, because I did that at night school, that really helped to develop me as a leader. And the other thing I would say is I often took on projects that I knew were bigger than me and that I was really, really afraid of. Projects that I will tell you, even on this call, I'd sit up at 2 a.m. and say, what have I done? What have I gotten myself into? But I've always figured out that the thing may be big, but we'll break it down into small pieces. We'll get the team together, and we'll succeed. And that was a consistent theme in my life. I'd find something that was bigger than me that I couldn't do right away, figured it out, the achievement would be there, and I think most people would tell you I have high achievement motivation, so I just push that forward. But taking risks like that is a big part of it. So hopefully that helps. There's a book called The Lessons of Experience that every good manager and leader should read. and I can't remember the author at this point, but that book pretty much guided me as well, so I would put that in there. Does that help?
Oh, it does a lot. Listen, so I'll go Google that. Actually, I won't. I will go and look it up on Amazon, and I'll put it in the show notes and put who the author is as well.
Yeah, I think it's Lombardo, and that's the name of the book. He's the author. There's one other author, but The Lessons is an outstanding book. Really good. It's developed by the Center for Creative Leadership. Really, really good stuff. Excellent.
Thank you. So, Jim, we've run out of time, and I want to thank you for a thoroughly enjoyable interview. I do appreciate you spending time with us today.
Well, thank you for the opportunity, Tony. I'm honored, and I appreciate your offer of this time.
Oh, my pleasure. So everyone out there, if you're part of Impact Nation, then listen to this episode, enjoy it, and then listen to it again. Our resident blue-collar scholar has given us a lot to learn in just over 20 minutes. Pick one of those lessons, inculcate them in your life in the next 6 months, and you'll be so much better than you are today. Until next week, this is Tony Sherman.
That's it for this week. Thank you for listening. Now go and apply these few gems. Make the wisdom you have heard your own. If you want to be part of our launch success, then please go to impactteamsradio.com/love and tell the world. If you want more and never want to miss a beat, please go to impactteamsradio.com/subscribe. If you have 3 minutes, we would love to see a positive review on iTunes. And until next time, remember to act on what you've learned, and you'll be ahead of most of the world. Impact Teams Radio.